social cognition and social psychology, we're very interconnected. Speaking of them, social psychology talks about how society sees the world working around you, which is how the human mind works in a social society, in interaction with people, in influence of people. And social cognition is a very, strong unit of it. So, like when we talk about maths having a unit of meter and centimeters, so is social cognition for social psychology. Social cognition is like about the thinking, reasoning, problem solving, decision making in a social scenario. So we are going to talk about, does social cognition impacts you when you're being around people? So the first theory that we are going to talk about is the theory of attribution. So let's understand when we start with what is attribution. Let's talk about what is an attitude. In a social cognition, attitude is forming opinions about people. It's about forming ideas about people. Like as soon as we see somebody wearing a very bright color, we start having an opinion, an idea about these people. So speaking of that, that's an attitude. Then we form an impression about them. The impression itself is a positive and negative. So impression would be, is the person, the color that they are wearing is a good color or a bad color? Why do they wear such a color? And then we come to, why do they do such a behavior? So the why, which is the reason why people are behaving in such a manner, the reason why people are forming such an attitude, and the cause behind your impression is called attribution. So the why behind the behaviors, the causes behind the behaviors is called attribution. So the first theory was given by Heider in 1958, which was believed that people, these were psychologists who stated that people are trying to make sense about the world around them, which is very true. People are continuously trying to make sense about the world that they are grouped around. So people tend to see the effect and cause relationship. They try to see why they are behaving, so what is the impact. Even if there is no cause and effect, people try to find it out. So according to Heider, we tend to make a casual attribution. So what is casual attribution? Most primarily focusing upon the understanding of people's behavior, attributing to internal state, which means attribute the cause of any behavior onto the internal state. That is, why someone is behaving like that, what is the reason that they're behaving like that, is completely on the basis of their internal state, their personality, their intelligence, their behavior. So that's called the dispositional attribution. So dispositional attribution is when you're casually trying to attribute people's behavior on their individual trait, which is their personality. And there's another attribution which is called the situational attribution. What is situational attribution? When we try to make attribution on the basis of situation. I'll give you an example which will probably solve you the difference between the two. Dispositional says internal state, situational says causing, forcing, putting it over the situations. So let's take an example. There's water on the floor, someone falls down. The situational attribution is going to be speaking about, oh, the person fell because they're always very careless. That's an internal state attribution. Now, when we put this attribution on a situational state, it's going to be, because the floor was wet, the individual fell on the floor. So it is not because their personality is like that, but their situation is like that. That's called situational attribution. This was given by Heider's knife psychology. And although this type of attribution is not always possible, you cannot always see causes behind people's behavior. But whenever we do that, according to Heider, the first thing that we do is blame it to the person's attribute, and the second is going to be situational. Now let's talk about another theory, which is called the correspondence inference theory. Correspondence theory was given by another psychologist, a very famous one, which his name was Jones and Davis. He proposed that, for example, if people want to make an inference about other people's behavior, which is, if you want to find out the cause behind people's behavior, which is originating from disposition, we tend to focus on the intention of the person's behavior. So that means we again focus on both the intentions. The intention could be the internal cause or the external cause. So the major purpose of this theory is that people explain why people make an internal or an external attribution. So it is trying to solve for you, why are we attributing people's behavior on internal cause or external cause. So internal causes, as we studied, it focuses on something which is personality, intelligence. Probably it could be something which is a person's own character, where a situation would be causes which are actually something that you cannot deal with, something which is out of your hands. Jones and Davis believe that people paid attention to internal behaviors rather than accidental one more. So this is a human thing. You can also understand this. This is a human mind when we tend to, blame the cause of someone's behavior to its internal factors rather than external factors. External ones are accidental. So, in order to believe that any action was intentional, the perceiver must follow three criteria. So, they say to understand the causes of a person's behavior, inference theory stated we need to follow three criteria. The actor who performs the action is fully aware of the consequence. He or she should be able to perform the action. And third is the actor deliberately perform the action. So, the fact that we give them a dispositional attribution, it could be because of three things: that he knows how to do it, he should be able to perform it completely, and the last is the person is deliberately pushing it to form it. So, that is called the correspondent inference theory. We are inferring the behavior of an individual on the basis of two things: internal, dispositional, or accidental, external. Now, factors that can impact that you pay attention to people's behavior or cause of people's behavior. First is choice, social desirability. So choice is if a behavior is freely chosen, it is believed to due to internal factor. So if you're choosing to do something, it is obviously because it's an internal thing. The second is social desirability. A lot of people who are not conforming behaviors will low social desirability. Like for example, there are people who will always say a yes to your commands, and there'll be people who say no's to your commands. The ones who say yes to your commands are the ones who are making situational and socially desirable attributes, and the ones who are saying no are actually the ones who are trying to make attribution as per something which is not socially desirable but as per them. So social desirability also makes you choose if you're going to do an internal dispositional attribution or external. So remember, if you are low socially conforming, you're going to do something that is as per your personality. So if it is the cause is personality, it is internal and dispositional. So that's how your social desirability, your choice actually impacts your behavior. Now, there are two effects that we are going to talk when we are going to attribute people's behavior, which is when we are going to find the cause of people's behavior. One is the non-common effect, the other is accidental intentional behavior. Non-common effect is if the other person's behavior has important consequence for ourselves. For example, if a person is out, asked out on a date, and he assumes that the fact that they are likely, they like you, that you are important, or not that they are simply available. So remember, non-common effect is something which can be judged by other people and has consequences in other people. I'll give you another example which is far more seen by other people. For example, you choose to participate in a competition because you've been told to. What would be the consequences? You feel that you're capable of it, that's why you've been told. And if you wouldn't have been told, it would be that you're not capable, you're not considered in class. Simple, non-common effect, something which makes, based on hindsight, something which is common sense. The other is accidental versus intentional, which is a behavior is intentional, likely to be attributed to their personality, and behavior that is accidental is likely to be attributed to their external case, which is situations. So these are two things that while we are attributing, we should always remember. And this is the correspondent inference theory. When you choose your behavior freely, it's a non-common effect. It is low social desirability. But somehow if you choose the behavior and you're forced to do it, remember, it's a common thing. It is going to be high on desirability. It will actually originate from situational factors. Why? Let's take an example. When people tell you that you should go out and interact with social people and increase your social interaction, you forcefully do it. What is that? Your behavior is happening because of social people, social effects. And if you feel people are telling you to interact, but you feel I have five set of friends, I am comfortable with them, I should not be discussing further. So this would be leading to something which is a behavior freely chosen on your disposition, which is your internal attribution. So this finishes with the correspondent theory. Now let's come to Kelly's covariation model. Kelly's covariation model is another theory of attribution in which the person tries to explain others or other people's behavior through multiple observation. So Kelly's covariation model does not say that attribution is on the basis of just internal or external, but they are saying that we are going to tell you that certain behavior is through multiple observation. Through multiple ways, we try to explain you what is the causes of people's behavior. This entire theory was found out by Harold Kelly, and it deals with both social perception and self perception of a person. So, how do you feel about other people, and how do you feel about yourself? According to Kelly's attribution theory, people make decisions or judgment about other people's behavior based on the perception of three different types of information. The first is consensus, distinctiveness, and consistency. This is like a tricky theory that you will come to. Like, they are saying that we make judgments about people on the basis of three things. Our perception is on the basis of three different types of information. First is consensus, distinctiveness, and consistency. What is consensusness? The extent to which other people will behave in the same way in a similar situation. So examples are on the board, you can check it. Allison smokes a cigarette when he goes out with his friend after a meal. So if he smokes a cigarette, high, if it is consensus, he or she will, is always going to smoke when out with friends. But if he does not, when he goes with other set of friends, consensus is low. So consensus is the extent to which you show the same behavior in the similar situation. So whenever you're going out with your friends, you tend to smoke. Also, there are some children when who are out with their friends tend to interact a lot. So remember, if you're going out with first set of friends, you interact a lot. If you go with a second set of friends, you interact a lot. It is high consensus. But if you go out with your second set of friends and you interact less, it is low consensus because same situation, same behavior is not happening. You change it. So consensus goes low. So it is the extent to which a person's will people will behave similarly in similar situation. Now distinctiveness stays the extent to which a person behaves in the same way, behaves extent to the same way in similar situations of different parameters, which is if Allison only smokes when a person she's out with friends, shows high distinctiveness, but if he smokes everywhere, it shows low distinctiveness. That means distinctiveness is your behavior pattern remains almost same in different scenarios. So it's very low, something which is very low and consistent. If you go out and do it with everybody, it's low distinctiveness. But if you do it only with your friends, it is high distinctiveness. Let's come to consistency. Consistency is the extent to which a people will behave like this every time a situation occurs. So let's take an example. When you see a metro rail coming too close to you, you panic. So this needs to happen every time if a metro rail comes. Remember, if you do it every time any railways comes to you, which could be a normal Indian railways that you pick up and not a fast paced train, even if it's standing in front of you and you tend to panic. Remember, that is something which is completely associated to low consistency. So if you tend to do it with one specific thing, it is high consistency. Do it with everything, low consistency. So so this theory states that we judge people on the basis of distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency. Consensus is same behavior, same place. Distinctiveness, that behavior only comes distinctively in that place, not similarly in all places. It's that behavior similar to that place. And consistency is that behavior only with that specific scenario. So that finishes with three attribution consistently working in terms of you choosing behavior on the basis of consensus, basis of distinctiveness, and on the basis of consistency. It's a little tricky, but I'll give you another example to keep it a little clear for all of you. Let's take an example. You saw someone hurriedly organizing their table. This is because they're short of time. So this behavior, if only happens that they are in short of time, this is high consistency. But if it is happening it every time their table, their organization tables are dirty, they're messily doing it rapidly and rushing, it is low consistency. Now distinctiveness is going to be they are different in different, one behavior for one situation, other behavior for other situation. So that is distinctiveness. And consensus is the person will behave in a similar way in a similar situation. So when they're in office, they will always behave in that way. So that is high consistency. But if they tend to behave all the time like this is low consensus and low consistency also. So this also helps us in making attribution about people if we wanted to do it personal, dispositional, or situational. So this finishes with Kelly covariation theory. Now, when we're attributing, when we are finding out causes, judging people on their behavior and forming an impression and attributing it as situation or as personal, there tend to be some errors. There tend to be some biases in attribution. What is those biases in attribution? First is called the fundamental attribution error. This is known as correspondence bias, also an over attribution effect. So what do we call it? Fundamental attribution, also known as over attribution effect, and correspondence bias. What is this? This is a tendency for people to overemphasize only the personal and dispositional factors when we are judging other people's behavior. So someone's banging on the door, they're always aggressive. You might not know they're stuck, inside or outside, but we always blame their personality. So that is something, human tendency to put it on people's personality. Then we have cognitive bias. This is something where we assume that a person's action depends upon the kind of person that they are, rather than the social and the environmental factors. So if you know, let's take an example, that if you know that somebody is very helpful, and you tend to use that, that's a cognitive bias. You know a thinking pattern of a person, they're very kind, very helpful, you tend to overpower that factor everywhere, which is, even if they're stuck at their work, you will say they're over helping other people. That's why you never know they're stuck at their work, maybe because of its lack of electricity, there is lack of resources, you don't see the social and environmental situation, but you end up doing it for what? You end up doing it only for their personality factors. So this is a cognitive bias, a judgment, a problem solving technique that you know about a person, and you always blame it on their personality. Then there is self-serving bias. This is another one which says the chances are that you attributed your successes to internal factors and your losses to situation, but it comes when you attribute other people's losses, you do it on their personality and their successes on situation. This is like a human thing. When you're succeeding in life, what do you say? It's because I've worked really hard. Other people succeed in life. What do you say? It's because the paper was easy. It is because they've got it very easily. So that's again a self-serving bias that we have. Then we have an actor-observer bias. Is explained. This is another bias which talks about the same pattern in actor and observer. This says that we judge other people's behavior as well as our behavior. So when it comes to our behavior, we prioritize ourselves, and when it comes to others' behavior, we do not. So when you're an actor, this is best explained as the tendency to attribute people's behavior on their attribute and your behavior on situation. So it's again the success and failure factors that we have. This is an error that we tend to do when we judge people a lot. We tend to use actor observer biases and obviously a self-serving bias, which is not a great thing, but we tend to do it. So this is another example on the image that you can see. Sorry, I was late, there was traffic. And you're always a flawed person. This is something that goes wrong with you all the time. So when it comes to other people, you tend to do it as self-serving biases. Now, finishing the thought process of what is attribution, how did it start, why do we, judge other people? Let's come to unit three, from 3 to 4, which talks about attitude and attitude change. Attitude is such a significant part of our social life that we tend to do it every time. We cannot go without it. You tend to form attitude is set of emotion, beliefs, behavior towards an object, event, situation, people. So attitude is tend to be formed every time, now, here or there. So according to Jolder report, what was attitude? A mental and a neural state of readiness organized through experiences, maybe an exerting directive, a dynamic influence on individuals' response to all objects and situation which is related or not related. So attitudes are actually a state of mind which is maybe directive, maybe at times it's an organized state of experience, and at times it's just an opinion coming to you. This is by Jordan Olpert. And attitudes have three components: a behavioral, a cognitive, and an affective. So it's an ABC. You will always remember it by ABC acronym. A is affective, B is the behavior and C is the cognitive. So when we speak of affective, it is, when we tend to form an attitude and it has a component of the feeling, the emotion. How does the attitude make you feel? Cognitive is talking about something which is how that attitude is making you think. Is it relevant or not relevant? And behavioral is something which is going to talk about how that attitude influences your behavior and your action. So remember, an attitude is always in sync when the ABC is in the same direction, which is towards the same attitude. Now let's come to some major functions of attitude. So let's understand, do we really need an attitude? If the attitudes are not there, what will happen? A lot of things. See, attitude helps us adjusting. Adjustment function directs people towards a pleasurable reward object and away from the unpleasant one. So attitude keeps you prepared. It's called the utilitarian concept. Making an attitude always keeps you prepared. So it always keeps you ready for things. It always makes you driven towards pleasurable thing and avoid something which is not relevant. Then ego defense function is also something that attitude does, which means that attitudes formed to protect people's ego. You tend to do those things and probably form an attitude about those things to protect your anxiety driven feelings. So we form an attitude as per our knowledge, as per many things and about people, only to take care of your ego. It's an ego function. Like we tend to deny someone and reject someone because forming an attitude, because probably we don't want to face them. Ignorance is bliss. You've had an ego defense. Also, attitude has a value expression, which means value expression attitudes enable you to express a person's centrally held values strongly. So, emotionally driven attitude will make you express things really better. Then there is knowledge function. So, already forming an attitude about things, object, event will keep you prepared, will keep you more active, more knowledgeable. So, that's the four function utilitarian. Utilitarian is a function of adjustment. Then we have knowledge, then we have ego defense and value expression. Now, first let's understand, our attitudes all are actually formed. Are we not born with it? We are not. We are never born with attitude. No little child will be born with the thought of having a state of mind of forming an opinion about people. That's learned. So are attitudes acquired? Yes, attitudes are actually genuinely acquired. So they're acquired how? Through personal experiences, through association, family groups, by teaching, by modeling, by parents, by social norms, etc. So, on a go, forming of attitude is given on the image on your, on your left, you can see coaches and teachers, your parents gives you values and attitudes from day one. Attitudes are formed by personal experiences. That's like a very strong one. And attitudes are something which media also influences. Also, your friends and peers tend to make changes in your attitude, and also social norms. Social norms is one big aspect that tends to make changes in our attitude a lot. Also, when we speak about this, you will understand direct experiences makes you see the personal experience, that thought, everything personally. So you tend to have a very favorable, unfavorable, positive, negative experience about it. Formation of attitude happens very easily there. Then association is when we are able to form an attitude because of association of an old and a new. Like for example, a student loves a teacher, so they end up liking their subject also. So you liking your teacher as an association, you tend to associate that to her subject. Associationism. Similarly, so with your friends, when you tend to get into a group of friends, you tend to what do you call that? You tend to, you know, like one set of friend because you are a part of that group. You like that group and you want to be associated to those people. So that's again associationism. Another is peer group. You talk about it being a peer group can be something which could be a peer pressure. We tend to model other people's attitude, and friends are one of the most important source. Then our parents, obviously, parents tend to shape our attitude. They give you values, they give you the attitude, they tell you which attitude is important and which is not. Also, at times, attitudes are formed because of economic status and occupation. I become psychologist. You realize your attitude towards people's problem. their process of healing, mental health becomes such an important factor. Your attitude towards mental health changes. Why? Because of the occupational background that you're coming from. Also, when we talk about a rural country for sect of our, of our country, they're unable to educate themselves because of their economic status. They have an attitude which is better towards occupation and not towards education because of the situation and circumstances, which is economical in nature. Then we come to mass media. Mass media has a greater influence. Advertisement, which are changing and forming our attitude. Also, advertisement, which are making an attitude towards a policy, a product, etc. And at times, Zanzog said in 1968, just mere experience of an object, like you just experiencing an object, just getting a hold, interacting with an object will help you make an attitude and form an attitude towards them. So also social learning that talks about modeling, also instrumental by getting a reward, also that is possible. So these are some of the ways that attitudes are being formed. So when attitudes are formed, can they also be changed? Yes, they can be. So forming an attitude is as difficult as forming an, liking towards something. So once that attitude is formed, how easy and how it is possible that we make a change in that attitude. So attitude changes are possible. Social psychologist Fritz Heider in 1947 gave us a balance theory and told us that interpersonal attitudes theory told us that to explain interpersonal relationships amongst objects, people, and opinions. So Heider explained the concept of balance existing between interpersonal relationship and specific objects which are two or three. So just to create a harmony. So Fritz Heider said this in a connotation of POX. So this is like forming a balance between interpersonal relationships. With a P is one person, O is another person, X is the topic over which we have an attitude. So remember, balance structures would be two positives, two negatives and one positive. This is balance, or completely positive. Or negative is going to be two positive and one negative, or completely negative. So according to Heider, we come to this image. P is person, another person, third is something which is the attitude that you're being formed. So let's take one example. The person P, the black color person, the with black hair that you find, we have a positive relationship with O. Let's take an example. We are forming attitude about education to all children, like common education to all till 18 years of life. So the person has a completely strong attitude towards another person that I really like you because they're friends. Now, this same person which has a black hair has a positive attitude towards X, which is education. They said education should be provided to everybody. But this O person feels that universal education is not a possibility. It's not that they don't like it, but they're very practical. So did you realize there are two positive and one negative? This is an imbalance theory. We need entire positive or two negative and one positive. So either what do? We create a balance by making a change between the person who feels that universal education is not possible, making it possible, or probably just make it completely positive. Everyone becomes positive, or make it two negative and one positive, which is the other person is also should feel that the education is not universal. So in this contrast, imbalance situation urges you, because there's something odd, they urges you to make sure that you make that change into balance. I'll give you another example. Let's take an example of chocolates. Eating chocolates is X, mother is P, O is the child. So mother will always love the child, right? P and O is a great combination, right? And P to X is no. Mother wants the child should not eat chocolates, but the O likes chocolate. PX is positive, PO is positive, but OX is negative. So what do? Ideally, we make the mother also positive, that you also like chocolates, or we make the child negative. That will balance the situation. So Fritz Heider communicated to us that there should be a creation of equilibrium and balance amongst attitude. If it is not, there would be a sense of discomfort and uncomfortable. Consistency would be lost. So that is something that we should talk about when we speak about attitude change. Now, speaking of this, when we talk about attitude change as a theory of Fritz Heider, and also when we speak about occupation and status and formation, let's come to the ideology of can we actually change attitude so quickly? So let's talk from formation and make changes and take one example. So how are teachers forming your attitude? Let's take another example. When you learn about the constitution of the fact that the right to vote is one of the most important thing. How do we learn it as adult that right to vote is important? And attitude is being formed by role modeling. Your teachers do it. They show you with their fingers, they show you their hands, they tell you their process of voting. They take you to that process and let you know that voting is an important thing. That becomes modeling, that becomes coaching by coaches. Then let's talk about past experiences that we've done. Now when you become an adult and you become 18 and you experience that entire journey of going to a ballot box, enjoying that voting thing, knowing that you have casted a vote, and let's take an example, the same person wins, that sense of contributing to the country gets stronger. Also, if even the person doesn't vote, you have that experience of moving towards the ballot, casting votes, seeing that change in yourself as being a responsible citizen. That's a personal experience. Then there is social norms that is not mentioned in the text, but it is on the image that we see. What are prejudices? Prejudices are negative thought about, it's a negative connotation about a group of people. So when we speak about this, negative connotation about a group of people, remember it goes from society to society. It passes on. So let's take an example. I'll give you an example. When your parents tell you to not attempt a specific kind of activity, let's take an example. A mother says you will only participate in a competition if it involves speaking, writing, no acting. Acting is something which is prohibited in our country, in our set of culture. We do not do it. Why? They consider it as incorrect. They consider it to be a little, not filled with pride. They feel that this is not something that our family does. So this creates a negative thought about the group of people who does it. So by creating that thought, you create a social norm. What is a social norm? A social rule that this is incorrect in your family. This should not be done. So that's how a social norm being apart changes and makes you form an attitude towards one thing and another for something else. Also, have you seen some children born in a family of doctors will always want to be a doctor? So let's take an example now. There's a new generation kid who's coming, wants to be a politician. How will that family think about it? They are holding a stereotype, which is a negative thought about a group of people, and a very positive thought about something which is medical field. Now, if your child wants to do something which is away from a medical field, how much support will they get? They will never be able to form an attitude towards probably politician, being a politician or studying a subject which is associated to this. Why? Because there is a negative thought, or probably there's a thought that our culture people doesn't do it. There cannot be a negative thought. They probably do not address it in their culture. We do not form such an attitude. So that's how social norms forms an attitude which can also further lead to prejudices, can further lead to discrimination. Now, let's come to something media. Media could be telephones, media could be television, it could be mobile phones. Today, mobile phone gives us so much of information, plenty of unfabricated. I also feel it's not fabricated, it's not sewn properly, it's not presented to us properly. There are random constant reel that keeps coming up and keeps brushing your mind all the time. So you have so much of information that social media can make an attitude towards something very quickly. So probably you don't want to buy a product for your household, but now seeing it on the social media, someone vouching for it, someone some influencer taking, and your favorite influencer, let's take an example. So now these are two things together. Your influencer, someone that you like, is your role model. Now your role model probably propagates for that gadget. Initially, you did not want to take that gadget, but the social media, the way she's projected that gadget in media, in a reel or probably in a video, and she being your favorite influencer, which is social learning and media influence, making you and forming an attitude. Then there is peer pressure that we've already studied. And then I gave you an example of economic and occupation. Let's come to something which is mass media. See, attitudes are not very stable. They tend to change with change of information. They change with the change of values. They change with the change of context that you're living in. So let's take an example. If you go outside India to study abroad, remember your attitude towards a lot of things will change. It will change towards the kind of country that you're living about, the kind of citizenship that you hold. Why? Because uh, the livability that you hold holds a different kind of medium. And attitudes are very less stable in comparison to values. So let differentiate between values and attitude. Attitude are the ABC component, which is opinion, state of mind, which are fragile in nature. They change when your emotion change, they change when your thinking changes. Values are moral code of conduct, the shoulds, ifs, and must. So I must do this. Like wearing a school uniform at school is important, it's must. You cannot go without it. So that's a value. You cannot change it. Student must study from teachers and respect them. A value that cannot change. It's not an attitude. Attitude is I might not like this subject or that subject in class 11th and 12th. It cannot be a must liking a subject because that's your choice. You need to build a career out of it. So that's what the difference between values and attitudes are. Values are code of conduct. They are if, shoulds, and musts. It's difficult to change them. Attitudes are just state of mind and opinion. It's relatively very easy to change them. Very easy. Then we talk about something which is mere exposure. Zanzog in 1968 said, which I quoted to you even before to give you an understanding. Exposure, mere exposure. Let's take an example. You met with an accident where a two-wheeler hit your four-wheeler. Imagine how your attitude towards a two-wheeler will completely change. You will put it out as irresponsible and speed racing vehicle. Why? Because you had just a little encounter, mere exposure, where they did not bang into your car, but they just slide next to you because of too much of traffic. But that mere exposure made you form an attitude. That's how we form an attitude. Social learning has been discussed, where I discussed you with the example of influenza. Classical conditioning is learning without any association. It's learning based on association, which is SSR conditioning. Subliminal conditioning is without awareness. You tend to get trained without knowing. Like, let's take an example. When you start working at a place, when you grow up and you start, let's take an example of psychologist. You tend to counsel people unconsciously. That sense of healing, that sense of right and wrong, that sense of navigating people to the right direction of life becomes a part of you. That is just unconditionally without awareness happen to you. That's called subliminal. Then is obviously instrumental. Children obviously are made to learn a lot of things, made form attitudes when they're rewarded. So child is telling you, go and wish everyone, I'll give you a candy today. That's instrumental. That is completely hold on to learn this. This is the right view. I will give you a candy, I'll give you a reward, or I will give you something that you like. So it's a reinforcement driven conditioning, consequential conditioning. Last is observational that we've already discussed. Now, how the way the attitudes are, formed, they're equally changed. I'll discuss two theories. One is already discussed, which is the balance theory. So we discussed here what? See, attitude always changes when there's a discomfort. When your attitudes are not in sync with your behavior, or when your attitude is not reflecting what you actually should reflect. So that's the time, when I feel that's the time when uh, we tend to change an attitude or tend to move towards an attitude when we feel that, okay, this attitude is not in sync with how I feel, is not in sync with the, how I talk, how do I think. So remember, Fritz Heider gave a theory of balance where he mentioned that he tends to study the relationship between people, things, and object together and create a balance in their field. If the balance is not created, if there's an imbalance, he said that the attitude is not is incongruent, not favorable, it's not in proper sync. So according to, when we speak about Fritz Heider, balance needs to be created in your attitude amongst all the subsystem of personal relationship. Personal relationship, according to him, was considered amongst POX component. And he said that imbalanced structures are actually associated with discomfort feeling, where people cannot live with, and they find a huge amount of discomfort to work in. So they'll find difficulty addressing that concern. They will find difficulty expressing their attitude. So that's imbalance. When you do not feel like the attitude, it's not an attitude which is being formed properly. You need to change it. So this concept, I'll do it again, which is POX, and I'll tell you a new concept which was by SM or Singh. Let's take P as a person, O as another person, X is X is something which is an object. Let's take careers. Psychology is a booming career that we need to talk about. And so a lot of people are picking up, but there is an ideology that psychology might not have that much of stability, and probably that kind of it has stagnation. It does not have growth in the society. So let's take X. So there is a parent P who obviously loves his child O. P and O is positive. Now P has a attitude relationship between psychology learning, psychology understanding, the knowledge, the career psychologists is very fruitful. According to them, as P as a parent, such a what do you call this? Such a career field is growing, booming, will have no stagnancy, you will tend to learn new things. You can venture in multiple things. You can do HR, you can get into counseling, you can get into clinical, you probably can get into organization. There's so many other things. You get into cognitive psychology. But O as another person, which is the child, feels that probably with psychology, I will just end up being and counseling people. I probably do not have any other field. I cannot teach, I cannot do any official work. So there is a stagnation. So what is this component? P is positive with O is negative with X, and P is positive with X, which is 2 positive and 1 negative, which is an unbalanced situation, which is even shown in the image that you have. So what do you prefer according to Fritz-Heider theory? According to Fritz-Heider theory, we actually believe in balance. We want to balance our situation. We want to make sure that the POX gets completely positive. So we change the attitude of the other child over the X. So that's how the triad from the imbalance context becomes wholly positive and makes it a complete positive situation. This is called the balance theory. Now, apart that, there is always a thought of cognitive dissonance. That's another time that we change you know, our attitude. How does that happen? So let's take an example. I'll give you an example. You'll understand how attitude change takes place by cognitive dissonance. Just a thought that I'm giving you. Uh, let's take an example. A person says, first thought, I'm eating pan masala and addicted to a substance. Second thought, doing this is really bad. It is hampering my health. It's injurious to health. And at the same time, it causes cancer also. Did you realize one topic and you have opposite moving thought? One saying that it is something that I cannot live without, I need to do it every day, and one, I know it is difficult, it's bad, it's injurious, it is not helpful for a human life. So did you realize when the two attitudes are dissonant in nature, there's an importance to get them into equilibrium. We need to get them into the same direction, which is get it cognitive consonance. So cognitive dissonance is a feeling of discomfort when your attitudes, components of your attitudes of cognition are in different direction. That causes confusion. That will never be depicted in your behavior. You will always be confused while doing it. So that's very true. Children who are addicted, in this growing time are addicted to substances and delinquent behavior. And they have a conscience that keeps telling them this is wrong, I might be convicted sometime, I might be caught. They are always feeling guilty about their activities. So that means your cognition is not supporting you emotionally and is also not supporting your behavior. So this is like a complete thought which says, which is also similar to balance but different because it talks about cognition, cognizance and dissonance. So whenever there is a cognitive dissonance, whereas same attitude has different lines of cognition moving in the A direction, positive, negative, negative, positive. Remember, we need to sync them. So what do we need to do? Either tell the person to not think that this thing is injurious to health and keep having it, or telling them to reduce it or quit it with time. If you're able to make them quit, it would be, I do not do such a thing because these things are harmful, hampering my situation. Did you realize that cognitive consistency has come in? They do it And now you will see, because of the cognitive consonance, they'll be reflected in the behavior. So such attitude change should happen when there is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is sense of discomfort, sense of difficulty, not being able to understand that this is something which will go on. So cognitive dissonance will require cognitive consonance. So any attitude which is dissonant in nature will require an attitude change. That theory was given by something which was Carl Smith. This idea of cognizance was given by Carl Smith. And the first one was Fritz Heider, and this one is Leon Fistinger. So understanding, now let's understand, when we finish the entire topic of what is attitude, attitude change, attitude formations, as going back to the functionality. Why do we need to form an attitude? Because they are utilitarian in our concept. They are of utility. We cannot function without forming an attitude. It saves time, it saves energy, it saves your process of knowing the world. It's required. The second thing that we talk about is it keeps you well prepared. And another very important thing that, as human life, we always see, we all are using ego defenses all the time. Denial, we are projecting things onto other people. We are, kind of making sure that whatever that we are going through is rationalized. We make excuses. So remember, we need attitudes. They need to be formed, because we need to ego defense. We need to make sure that we are saving ourselves in terms of time, in terms of energy, because it's of utility. Also, they give you a lot of knowledge about a place. So going to a place and you formed an attitude beforehand, you realize what will it that make a change of. It will save you from feeling lack of knowledge. Before going to a place, you form an attitude about the places, people, ideology, about the kind of living that they have. It saves time, saves energy, gives you ample amount of knowledge. So this is why attitude formation is such an important thing in our life, and we cannot go without it. Now, when you get back after this unit, try this instance to understand that you've understood this unit well. Sit in a room of people in a place that you are completely unaware of. So, a place that you've not seen on the internet, like, before going to a place, we tend to check it on the social media, the different food portals that you check it on, its rating. Don't do that. Just check the name and go without judgment. You know what will it happen? You will run out of knowledge. There would be no judgments. There you will take a lot of time by checking where the place is, because now that you've not seen it on the map, you've not seen it where the area is, what will happen? It will take more effort to reach that place, more time to judge that place, more, and you will not know what is to be eaten because you did not check on the internet what is their main cuisine. So this will take away more time. So remember, forming an attitude is such an important thing. At the same time, next time when you go to a place, do this activity. Check that on the internet, check its rating, check the favorite food that they serve, check the location, the map, the time taken, how do you should commute, what is the milestone next to it, like a land spot, landmark next to it. Now you will realize this forming of attitude has made you form an impression beforehand, has saved you time, has saved you effort, has saved you energy, and also at the same time has saved you a lot of, you know, given you ample amount of information and knowledge, and made sure that you're all prepared as an individual. So it keeps an individual prepared. Now, attitudes are fragile in nature. Repeating as we do a revision, attitudes are fragile in nature. They're less structured. They can always be changed. It could be changed because of influence, it could be changed because of what we studied by parents, peers, it could be changed because of the social connect that you're a part of. Always remember, also it can be changed because of the theory that we have talked about, to create a balance, a congruency, which is very important. So hope you understood what is attribution, why do we put a cause behind people's behavior. Also at the same time, when we put a cause behind people's behavior, there is something which is a generation, which is attitude. Attitudes are acquired, they are not something that we are born with. We are blank slate. They are less structured until they have their components that we study today, ABC, intact, and they are liable to change. So attitudes are actually formed, not acquired. They can be changed by POX theory and cognitive dissonance, and there'll be more that we'll be looking forward to. So this was today's unit for unit 3 and 4 for BPC 132 of social psychology, talking about social cognition. So hope everyone understood this unit. Thank you.